Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Just checking the sound here.
Yeah, I'll hang up. Okay, all right.
So, good morning. Welcome this Friday morning to News for Life. I'm your host, Rick Paul, and I trust you're having a wonderful morning this morning. I'm just getting set up here so I can see what's going on. So thank you for tuning in. I trust you're having a wonderful morning. We are now also broadcasting on YouTube. And so hopefully, if you've already subscribed to the YouTube channel from Lamb Radio, and by the way, what I can do is you can actually go and see that on, you can see, if you go to messianiclambradio.com, you'll be able to see the banner. So I'm just going to pull that up here. Okay, so once you're there, then you'll be able to see on the banners, you'll see buttons that flick between banners. Well, on the fourth one, you'll see subscribe to the YouTube channel. And you can click that link and that will take you to YouTube, to the Messianic YouTube channel. And so then you can subscribe. And then for notifications, you also want to click on the bell next to the subscribe button, the red bell, and then that will give you a notification automatically. So automatically, if you subscribe to the channel, then when we come on live like this, you won't have to do anything. You'll automatically get noticed that we are now live, and you can flick straight away to the YouTube channel on your computer or on your phone, and you can watch the show live, like what we're doing right now. So that's really cool. It's a new feature that Mark has introduced, and I think it's a terrific idea. So right now you can actually be on YouTube, and you can actually see what we're doing here. So as we go along, of course, we'll just get a little better and better at this. So this is something pretty brand new for me. And so I'd like to get this situated over here, and then we'll be able to start the show with what's going on in the news. So let me see here. So yeah, we've got, I've got this here. So, all right. So I can see that's going good there. So we've got a broadcast on YouTube too, which is really good because it's really easy. Say if you want to go to an archive, you just go to the YouTube channel, pull up an archive, and you can listen to the show again. Or if you listen to part of a show and then you've got to go to work or something, you can always tune back in real easily by going to the YouTube channel and doing it that way. Plus, everybody automatically who subscribed and gets the notification will just be, it doesn't matter where you are, you'll get a notification that we're live. And if you've got time, you can just click that and it will remind you, hey, you can tune into the channel. And so that's a really, really good feature. And I'm sure that's going to be something really good for Lamb Radio. So that's, you can find that on the banners at the top, and then you can just click on the YouTube banner there. It's the fourth one over, and then you'll be able to click onto the YouTube channel. So thank you for tuning in this morning. We do have a number of different things going on here. We had the Hurricane Michael. I want to talk about that. There's some political events that have been happening in the news. There's several things that I want to touch on, which, so there's, Trump has been doing a lot of campaigning for the midterms. So I'll probably, focus a bit on the politics, of course, again, which I like to do prior to this midterm election, because I think this is, Sean Hannity, we always say like this election is the most critical ever. How many times have you heard that? I mean, that, you know, probably gets overused a lot, but that it is really true in this particular case, because just imagine what would have happened if Hillary had won, you know, in 2016. This America would probably no longer be in existence the way we know America to be. Not that it's you know, anything like what we'd like it to be, but it's on the right track to becoming what we like it to be. You know, thankfully we've got Trump in there instead of Hillary, and so that is terrific. So this midterm is really critical. I just can't imagine what America is going to be like should, for some reason, we lose, say, for instance, the Senate, or if we lose the House. If we lose the House, they can try to impeach Trump, which they've said that they would want to try. And it would have to be, of course, ratified in the Senate, which is not going to be. So it's not like they, even if they did win the House, it's not like they're going to have a whole lot of power, but they will control what goes on in the House. Nancy Pelosi, who wants Nancy Pelosi in power? I'm going to talk a little about her, and then Dianne Feinstein and some of the things that they've talking about. Just absolutely blow your mind. So so that's why I like to talk about it, because some people are obviously not voting. So that's why it's good to talk about this. And so if you're not voting, in fact, can you imagine this? Is everybody who is voting would contact somebody who's never voted before and talk to them about it, about the process, because they have to be registered to vote or they can't. It's a bit like Trump's family. They were all registered Democrats. And so when it came time for the election, they were so busy campaigning, they forgot to register as a Republican. And so they weren't able to vote for Trump, which is hilarious. I think that's quite funny. So that is, of course, something that you have to plan ahead for. You just can't wait till election day and then find out you're not registered. And so you just can't vote. So you got to plan for it. So if you find somebody who's never voted before, you're bringing somebody to the table that's going to make a difference. So imagine if all the Republicans could find somebody that's never voted before and they could bring them to the polling booth and have them vote. That would be huge. That would be really awesome. And that would really change things for the better if they're going to be voting in the right direction. Obviously, if you find somebody who's never voted before and they don't feel the same way you do, I think you would probably not encourage them to vote. So that just stands to reason, of course, that that's what we're going to want. So that's why, you know, this side of the midterms, I do like to emphasize what's going on as far as that goes, because that is rather critical, and that's going to affect the future dramatically. If you know this, so what they said is that the party in power, the president, say for instance, right now we got Trump, then usually the first midterms that we're going to run into is going to be a switch away from, so because he's Republican, so that typically you got to move away from it. And there's a lot of tight races with a lot of Democrats running that seem to be, for some reason, they seem to, for instance, the governorship in Florida, this Gillian guy, you know, raising taxes and open borders and all this regulations and everything, taking away our Second Amendment. I mean, all these things, and he's supposed to be, you know, leading in the polls. I don't believe for a second this is the case, but this is what the polls are saying. And what I think the way the polls work, just my view on the polls, is what they do is they use the polls. By the way, my name is Rick Paul, P-O-L, not Rick Poll. Okay, so just so you know that. So I do know about polls, but so they skew the polls in anticipation for the amount of fraud that they're allowed to commit. There's something like 270 counties where people are registered in more than one county. 270 counties in the United States where people are registered to vote in more than one county. So, you know, say if you live in Florida, you could maybe have a house in one county and a vacation home in another county. That gives you 2 places where you could be registered with a legal address. And this is what's going on. And that's a lot. So there's obviously a lot just right there, which we're talking about. And then how many times do you hear about dead people voting? And that happens a lot too. So there is a bit of a problem there where you've got dead people voting, or you got people voting in more than one county. The Democrats with Project Veritas, he has been able to get on record a video of them talking about busting people around and doing that for decades. He said, this is a Democrat guy. He said, we've been doing this for decades. And so voter fraud is very real. And Trump, by the way, he had tried to crack down on this. And so let me see. So anyway, so right now on YouTube, you can see me, and I've got, of course, some slides I'm going to show you later. And of course, we'll go through some of the news. But Trump had tried to fix this voter fraud. So he organized a committee to investigate, find out how many people are registered on the polls. And of course, you would believe if I'm telling you what's really happened to that committee. It fell apart. The reason it fell apart was because all these Democrat states, and there's some 20-odd states, maybe just actually 19, that are controlled by Democrat governors. So these Democrat states, they said, you know, you don't have jurisdiction to come in here and demand our census information and stuff like that. So they did not want to share that with the federal government. Well, I'm pretty sure you could call that a national security, and he definitely has. So for national reasons, Trump has jurisdiction, okay? And if that has to do with the federal election, then I would say he does have jurisdiction in this front. And he didn't fight for it enough, because what happened was they just said, no, you're not going to get this information. What Trump wanted to find out was how many people are in their state, and how, out of those that are in the state, how many are registered to vote. And why do you think they're hiding this information? It's because they are planning voter fraud. And Obama was on record in 2016 saying that there is no such thing as voter fraud in America. Well, why would he say that? Well, because there is voter fraud. Everybody knows there's voter fraud. And by the way, anytime you watch in these midterms, anytime that you hear that a voting computer needs to be calibrated, that means they've been caught red-handed converting votes from a Republican to a Democrat. And so they go, oh, it just needs to be calibrated. In other words, we've been caught, but don't worry, we'll fix it. No, this should not be happening. And so what happens is, because there's a tremendous amount of voter fraud, I would estimate in the last federal election that there was perhaps as many as, on the very low side, I would say 4 million, and on the high side, up to 15 million fake votes. But say, like, you know, conservatively speaking, I would say 6 to 7 million easily, probably twice that. And they've got records that prove all this, that dead people are voting, that people are voting in more than one county. They've got records of all this, like 270 counties. People are registered in more than one county. So this is just a fact. We've got 3,000 counties in the United States. And so there's that fraud there, where they're registered in more than one county. Doesn't mean that they're going to make a fraudulent vote in both counties, but they can and get away with it. And unless we're keeping tabs on who's voted and who's not, that's why we need voter ID. And by the way, who's always opposed to voter ID? It's the Democrats that are opposed to it, because they believe that we're restricting the vote. And I've seen Mark Dice and other people, they would interview blacks, and they go, so do you think requiring people to have a photo ID is discrimination against blacks because, you know, now they can't vote? Well, so the blacks would say, Well, of course not. What do they think we are, stupid? Like, that's the most stupid thing. That's really discriminating to think that we don't have any access to the internet. So that's really what they're suggesting. The Democrats are suggesting that blacks are too stupid to know how to know where to get your photo ID, to go get a driver's license, or go to a state office and ask where to get a photo ID if they don't have one. I mean, most of them would already have one. And so the reason they don't want photo IDs is because if you have a photo ID, they're unlikely to be able to vote twice. And as I mentioned on the previous show, is that what they're trying to do is what Trump, I believe, is trying to do, is he's actually trying to get a paper ballot as well. So you do your electronic one, but if there's any dispute, say, for instance, if for some reason the Democrat wins by 1,000 votes or something, or some narrow margin, that they could actually then say, okay, well, let's not rely on the computers. Let's go check what actually happened on the paper side. And then they could switch easily to a paper ballot count. And then a paper ballot could confirm, any irregularities, say where people have been voting more than once and stuff like that. So, and also if the computers were switching votes, that could be stopped as well. So that is that's something that is something that Trump was trying to get to the bottom of. And guess what? They shut him down. But there's some good news, and that's what News for Life is about. Is I'm going to share you stuff that you probably just are not going to hear this anywhere on the mainstream news. And Sean Hannity, I never heard him talk about this either. But so what happens is after the committee had shut down after a few months, because he started this right in his first year in office last year. And so what Jeff Sessions has done in North Carolina, I don't know if you remember, but I'm right next to North Carolina, is the governor was Pat McCrory for a few years. He's a bit of a rhino. But anyway, at least he was Republican for the most part, is that he was pushed out by a few votes. And there's a few states that are notorious for voter fraud. North Carolina is one of them. South Carolina isn't, but North Carolina is, and of course Virginia is, and Maryland, and as well as Washington D.C. But Washington D.C. is not really big on voter fraud because they don't need to be. So they focus on areas where they need to be, like Maryland and North Carolina. These are big states. And of course, voter fraud in Florida is huge. And so how you can tell voter fraud in the last election, if you monitored the vote counts live, then what they did was they would go, 60% counted, 70% counted, 80, 90% counted. And then say like in Pennsylvania, which is notorious for voter fraud, is it went up to about 96 or 97%, and then suddenly it dropped back to 91%. Well, that's voter fraud because they go, okay, the votes are going the wrong direction, so let's just roll it back a little bit and then throw a few more votes towards Obama, Hillary in that case. So that's what they will do. And so in Miami-Dade County in Florida, we saw, John was out there. He's going, Rick, why are they not calling Miami-Dade County? They called all these other counties on the East Coast. Well, they had to find out how the panhandle was going to decide whether it was going to go for Trump or not. They needed to find out how many more votes they needed from their fraudulent county, Miami-Dade. So they have a few counties there, which they can tilt by adding a few more votes if they need to. They actually did this. And there was one lady, she had complained about voter fraud to the police. And so this was reported. They made a police report on it. They never did anything about it. Voter fraud is a crime, and they could face several years in jail. But for some reason, do you ever see them prosecuted? In fact, of all the people that say vote twice in the United States, do you realize how many that have actually been prosecuted? Say like there was millions. I'm just talking about, say, conservatively, there was 4 million fake votes. And by the way, when the president of the United States, Barack Obama, goes on an interview with a Hispanic reporter, and she asked him, can people that are not United States citizens, can they vote? Would they get in trouble with the law? And he said, oh, no. And the way he worded it was that you could take it, two ways, what he was saying. It's really smart. I mean, it's a pretty smart guy. But really what he was saying was it's okay if you vote and you're not a citizen of the United States, you will not be going to jail. Well, yeah, for the most part, that's true. So say out of millions that did vote, we perhaps just of, say, illegals that voted, quite possibly in the last election, there was 2 million illegals that voted, perhaps a lot more. But say on the low side, 2 million. They know a lot of people did vote, and guess what? They have arrested, and charged only 15 people. And out of those 15 people, I think half of them, they dropped the charge. And so the actual people that, had to go to jail because of it, it was minuscule, nothing. It's like, instead of, say 60 or 70%, it's like 0.000001 of the actual fraudulent votes gets charged. And so this is where the problem is. They interviewed somebody in Charlotte, and they asked this Democrat organizer, does it matter if I'm not, they pretended that they were Latino and that they weren't registered to vote and that they were here illegally. And they go, does it matter that I'm not a U.S. citizen? And the Democrat organizer working for Hillary said, oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, you don't have to be registered. They've got these people on record as saying that. Well, when the president of the United States says it, well, of course, the Democrat organizers are going to say the same thing. If Obama can say it, they can say it too. So they were asking anybody to vote. They said, oh, it doesn't matter. Just go in there, fill out the form, and vote. And then I mentioned before, there's somebody in New York, they dressed it up like a Muslim with a burqa on. And she goes, oh, I'm not on any roll. I'm, not registered to vote. And the lady at the polling booth said, oh, that does not matter. Here's a form. And she gives the lady a form and says, just fill this out and you can vote. And the lady says, with the burqa on, so you can't see who she is. She goes, well, I don't have any ID. She goes, that doesn't matter. Okay, so do you see a problem here? Because if they don't have any ID and they're going to go ahead and vote, then we don't know who they are, because they can put down Pinocchio, right? And how are we going to verify if Pinocchio came in or not? We don't know. No ID was shown. So if you don't have to show ID, you can fill out anything you like on that piece of paperwork. The second you walk out of that polling booth, they can never, ever charge you because they don't know who it was who came in. And you're wearing a burqa. So it's very serious. So the good news is Jeff Sessions has used the DOJ to go after some states. In this case, it's North Carolina. And in North Carolina, he's asked for the records going back to 2013. So basically, most of Obama's era. And he's asked for every record. And they're talking about something like 6 million records that they're asking the North Carolina voting commission, whoever handles that, to hand over all these records. And so that's huge. So yes, Trump's, committee was disbanded because the states refused to cooperate with him. But the good news is that Jeff Sessions, which you don't hear any good news about, actually came out and has put a subpoena on the state of North Carolina that they're going to require them to produce the records, which is, huge. And so they've been complaining, North Carolina's complaining, saying, look, right before the midterms, we don't have the resources to go get all this information. So they think it's not very practical to be asking for that at this point. Well, they're going to have to hire people to do it. So they're going to try to find out what happened over the last 5 years in North Carolina. There's a lot of fraud going on, and they will uncover fraud. And what happened was the race was so close that Pat McCrory did contest it, and then he decided to drop it after a few weeks, unfortunately. So unfortunately, he dropped it under pressure, from the Democrats to say, look, you're not going to win. I mean, he's got the votes. And so he was forced to concede. Well, see, because what are you going to do? You're going to pay for, you're going to pay for an investigation, which is unlikely. The outcome is unlikely. And then you might never know really what's going on. So thankfully, the DOJ is suing North Carolina and subpoenaing all the voting records that they have, some 6 million. And hopefully he's doing that in other states as well, like Pennsylvania would be a good one. Michigan would be a good one. Florida would be a good one. Colorado, I believe there's a lot of fraud in Colorado. And then, of course, California. The most fraud is in California. I was thinking that California could go red. Can you imagine if California went red? There are some people that were driving around, with Republican stickers on their cars in California and stuff like this. And they said, it's surprising how many compliments they get. And they're in Southern California, where they didn't expect to see too many because they would assume that most of them are Democrats. There's a tremendous amount of them that are Democrats, of course. You got a lot of people in Los Angeles, for example, and many of those people there are, been persuaded to vote for the Democrats. So, but there's a lot of people that live in California and more the rural areas, and they are more leaning Republican. So, and Ronald Reagan did run there. But they've had Jerry Brown now for so long in California, and they're in power, and they're slanting everything in their favor. And so if every year there's an election, they can count on 2, 3, 4 million of these fraudulent votes to come in their favor. Then are we ever going to? Why isn't the Republicans never, go after, say, exposing this fraud? They just let it go, just like what we saw with Kavanaugh. And this psychiatrist, doctor, professor, come in there with accusations that should never have been heard because she had no actual evidence. She never even filed a police report. So if you don't have any sufficient evidence to file a police report, you certainly cannot bring it before a Senate hearing for a judicial nominee like Kavanaugh, like they did with Kavanaugh. And yet the Republicans who controlled the whole hearing for Kavanaugh allowed it. They're all attorneys. They all know the legal requirements for having a case or not. And they're so afraid. A lot of them, for instance, Ted Cruz, I was really hoping he would have been elected president in 2016, but he wasn't. But he was saying, oh, yeah, she needs to be heard. Why are these conservatives saying this? These constitutionalists saying that? The reason being is they're facing midterm elections that are tough, and he's fighting this guy in his, what does he go by, some Latino name like Beto or something like that, Beto. He's not even Latino, so he gives himself a Latino name so he could try to win Latino votes. So I did mention to you the historic news last time was that they had a special election for the Texas Senate, and there was a seat there that was held for 136 years by the Democrats. And by the way, look at the demographics. It is 73% of minorities that live there. 66% or so are Latinos, and 7% are Black. So something like that. So 73% are minorities, and minorities normally vote 80 to 90% for the Democrats. And what happened was this was a seat which was held by a Democrat, and he was charged with fraud, and so he was forced to resign. So thankfully, there are some situations where they are held account and that they're forced out of office for the fraud that they're doing. That is great. Well, what happened was in this situation was it was a battle, of course, between their new Democrat guy and the Republican, and the Republican won the race. And of course, it was hugely supported by the governor of the state and by the Republicans. Really supported this one, and it was a long shot, but they all stood together and they really helped this guy because if he wins that election, that was historic, and it was a huge blow to the Democrats. So we've just seen an example of this was a few weeks ago where a strong Democrat seat was lost, and that's what can happen to California. California is a stronghold for the Democrats, but it can be won by Republicans. And it's only because of fraud that they're able to hang on to a lot of these things. It's a bit like in Florida. They claim in the polls that Gillian is ahead. This Democrat guy wants to raise taxes. So if you go ask people on the street in Florida right now, in Miami Beach and Tampa and wherever, Jacksonville, say, hey, are you for raising taxes? How would you like your taxes to be doubled? How would you like more regulations, on businesses and slow them down from being able to employ people? And let's raise the minimum wage so that, businesses can't afford to hire as many people. And so they're going to have to lay off more people. And how about we just get rid of the borders and just allow anybody in, including terrorists? And how about we get rid of ICE? And how about we do all this crazy, absolute crazy stuff that really is treasonous? All right. You go ask people on the street, would you vote for this guy Gillian who's for all these things and get rid of the Second Amendment? Are you going to be able to get anywhere close to 50 votes for this guy, 50% of the votes? I don't believe so. This is what they're suggesting. They are actually suggesting that they have that many people that want to vote for this guy. I don't believe so. So that's what they're suggesting, and so there's huge problems that I see going on there, and I wanted to just play this here. This is how pathetic Obama was. If there was one man that could have helped out the black people for 8 years, it was Obama. And he came from Chicago, a stronghold for the Democrats. And so you would think that if you're president, how you could help your home state. Trouble is, if your home state is Kenya, you're not going to see too many Americans being benefited. And that's exactly what happened. Blacks did not do well. And by the way, there are so many blacks now that are for Trump. I saw one guy, he just started a YouTube channel. I don't know how long he's been on YouTube, but he said, he said, I'll soon be at 40,000 subscribers. He said, because just a few weeks ago, I was at 20,000. So, he said people are really, listening to this, and he's, a black guy, conservative. I think he said blacks for conservative politics or something like that. I forget what his channel is, but this is just an example of what's going on. Well, guess what? He said just a few weeks ago he's at 20,000 subscribers, so he's close to 40,000. So I went to check. This video was from the 8th of October, right? Just a few days ago. Well, it said that he had 65,000 subscribers. I don't know what it says today, probably much higher. So he's gone 300% up in subscribers. Then I had to check the views. How many people are actually watching this guy talk about conservative politics and getting behind Trump and supporting Trump? Right? These are all blacks on this channel. The vast majority are all these blacks. Guess what? He had over 500,000 views on a YouTube video that was out just a couple days, a day or two. In the first day or two, he had 500,000 views. Go back to 2016. Did this happen anywhere in America? Was there even one black guy that had influence? I'd never seen this guy before. I've never seen him ever before in my life. Okay. And here's a guy with a channel with a following subscribers of 65,000 and growing at something like 100% a week is absolutely crazy. And because he said a few weeks ago he was at 20,000, now he's at 65,000, and he had 500,000 people viewing his video. Puts out a video, and within a day, he's got 500,000 views. Huge. So don't tell me that Trump is not popular. There's no way that this guy could have that many views amongst black people if blacks who are normally voting at, say, 92% are now voting for Trump. They had Kanye West in the White House yesterday. I totally disagree with Trump. He should not be doing that. But anyway, he did that, and Kanye West is probably really good ambassador for the blacks. He's a billionaire. Can you believe it? He suffers from schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and people said he could never make it. He went to college and he learned a few things, and he got a trade, and he wanted to get into, Hollywood and do some videos and stuff, and play some music and stuff. And next thing you know, he's a billionaire. That is amazing. But anyway, the exciting thing is, in the last election, he was kind of silenced. The Democrats had so much control in the last election, they just silenced him. He had suffered a nervous breakdown in 2016. Well, that's what they say, but he was pushed away. He was taken off the stage, and he was told not to talk about politics. When he didn't stop talking about politics and exposing Hillary for what she was, they removed him from the limelight. It was until after the election that he survived again, probably a year and a half later. Go find out about it. Actually, don't go find out about it. There's not a guy that I really want to promote. But anyway, my point is this, is that they cannot stop these people now. And Kanye West, they have no way. The Democrats, the deep state, has no control over him right now. And he's going out there saying whatever he wants. And he's telling black people to go and experience life and stop just taking everything for granted that, we have to vote Democrat year after year after year. We don't have to. So this is, I really don't like listening to Obama. So what I did was I played this in high speed. Take a listen.
Go back and grab soundbite number 5. Here is Barack Obama. This is during the campaign when Trump promised to do exactly what he has delivered. Trump promised to deliver, and he has. On June 1st, 2016, PBS ran a special Questions for President Obama. It was a town hall, Elkhart, Indiana, and a Carrier employee said, look, I'm representing a steelworkers union. I'm trying to find out, what do we have left? All our jobs are leaving Indianapolis. I see here you're doing a lot of things, but in Indianapolis, there's nothing there for us. I mean, what's next? What can we look forward to in the future as far as jobs, employment, whatever? Because
and when somebody says, like the person you just mentioned, who I'm not going to advertise for, that he's going to bring all these jobs back. Well, how exactly are you going to do that? What are you going to do? There's no answer to it. He just says, well, I'm going to negotiate a better deal. Well, how exactly are you going to negotiate that? What magic wand do you have? And usually the answer is he doesn't have an answer.
Yeah, you got right. Now, who is it that looks like the blithering idiot? Who looks like the abject pessimist that he was?
So that's Rush Limbaugh saying it like it is, and he goes about Trump. He goes, so what? What's he going to do? What's Trump? Who does Trump think he is? That Trump can actually do anything like that, bring back jobs. He said, sir, those jobs are not coming back. Well, those jobs did come back, and Trump did restart the coal industry. He did restart the steel industry, and those jobs did come back in West Virginia. And so, the very things so they just proved Obama wrong. And in the last less than 20 months or 18 months, they've added 4.2 million jobs. Those are facts. You can't hide from those facts. So that is, I'm just trying to see here about sharing my screen so that you can see my PowerPoint, but for some reason, I'm not getting it to show for some reason. So I'm on YouTube here. So if you're following on YouTube, just trying to get you to share this this PowerPoint, but it's not letting me do it. I don't know why that is. So It's working here on my end, but on your end, you're not able to see it. That's too bad. Oh, I know what. I know where I have to go. I have to go and find out. Oh, there it is. Okay. So there it is here. So I can go and share the screen. That's what I need to do. Now you can see the PowerPoint. Okay, screen 1. Okay, we might do this and we go share. So this here, this is going to work great. Okay, so now you can see what's going on. And so let me go. Now I just have to bring this over so that you can see here. Okay, let me see here. Dun, dun. All right. So, well, that's cool. All right. I do have this here. I apologize for this. Just take a second. Get this out. So I've got the big screen there. So maybe I should do this a little different. And we're going to do this here. Oh, there we go. So we do screen 1. There we go. Share. All right, so now we got it. Okay. So there we go. So yeah, so I'm just going to get this here going so you can see what's going on. I have to get this out of the way so you can see that. We got a couple monitors here, and I want you to see this monitor. And I've got, oh, I see what, I gotta go back this way. Okay, there we go. And there we go. So the verse that I wanted to highlight today is from Isaiah 40. Did you not know, have you not heard, the everlasting Elohim, Yahuwah, the creator of the ends of the earth, neither faints nor is weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint, and to those who have no might, he increases strength. Even the youth shall faint and be weary, and the young men stumble and fall. But those who wait upon Yahuwah renew their strength, and they shall rise up the wing. They rise up the wing like eagles. They run and are not weary. They walk and are not faint. That translation is a little different to what I'm used to, but that is pretty awesome. So that is the verse I wanted to highlight for today, is because you might say there's so much pressure. Maybe you're under, having a tough year and things are pretty difficult for you. Well, just remember, we've got to come to God with all our troubles and our burdens and lay them before him. And so, because what did Yeshua say? He said, cast your burdens on me, for my yoke is not heavy. So if you feel like you're under a heavy yoke, perhaps you need to trade it with Yeshua. Take on his yoke where it's not heavy. And it says, those who wait upon Yahuwah renew their strength. They rise up on the wings like eagles. They run and are not weary, and they walk and they do not faint. What does it mean to rise up on wings like eagles? What that means is this, is that eagles can just launch off their perch, whether it be a tall tree or a mountain ledge on the cliff face. They don't have to flap. They don't have to flap their wings to take off or to get up they don't have to work to go where they want to go. They stretch out their wings and they take the thermal drafts that are coming up that cliff face, and they're carried away by the wind, and they can go anywhere they want, up or down, and just let the whatever you call that, the wind drafts, take them where they want. So that's what this verse is talking about. It says they rise up on wings like an eagle. And that's also the way that Yahuwah described how he was taking his people Israel through the wilderness into the promised land. He said, I bared you on the pinions of the wings of an eagle. So that means is that when an eagle teaches his children, his little eaglets, how to fly, he knocks them out of the nest and they actually fall down the cliff and they're about to die as they hit the rocks below. But then the mother eagle swoops down and carries them on her back, and they learn to fly that way. And so when they're pushed out of their comfort zone in Egypt, as horrible as it was, they were enslaved to the Egyptians and to Pharaoh there. It was God who took them out and pushed them out of the nest. But then what happened? He fed them. He brought them into a desert where there was no water and no food, and he fed them. That's what the mother eagle does. He catches the eaglets on her wings and carries them. So it was God who carried them through the desert. It's good to keep in mind the might and the power of our God. He is our deliverer, and he is our God. So let me grab a cup of coffee here, and let me see. We got this here. He is our shepherd, and he lies down with us, and he leads us, even through the most dangerous places, the shadow of death, where we feel that there's no way out. And then he provides us a way out. Not only that, he causes our cup to runneth over, and he provides us a meal in the presence of our enemies. That's exciting. So let's see here as we flick through. Wanted to talk about the Hurricane Michael. So for some reason, I don't have all the answers. I ask questions, and it's really, really disturbing what we see here with this hurricane. I don't know what it is, but this is really amazing. This hurricane, as you know, if you listen to the news, what do they say? They say this is the most powerful hurricane to ever hit the Panhandle, coming out the Gulf of Mexico, and maybe even, I don't think Florida as a whole, because I think they've had some bigger ones coming off the East Coast there. Well, what you've got is a very strange situation, is that where the gale force winds were the most, maybe up to the gusts reached approximately, say, 129. That's what they said. This is not recorded, but this is what they said, that the wind gusts could have got up as high as 129 miles an hour. Say, to blow roofs off of buildings, you could actually... Oh, okay. So maybe we've got a call coming in here. 1 second. I don't know if call. There we go. Hello. Do we have somebody on the line?
Hey, I just wanted you to know that I listen, and I've got my family listening. Yeah. I want to thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Well, thank you for calling in. Thanks to Mark. I wouldn't have not have known how to even answer.
A lot of people are too shy to call in.
Yeah, and also thank you for calling in. In fact, Mark is telling me I got a call coming in. I didn't know what was going on, and so thankfully he took your call, and so that's nice that you called. So where are you calling from?
I am calling from Toledo, Ohio.
Wow. Okay. We're in the Carolinas. Mark is not that far from me.
I'm in a liberal Democratic Union county.
Wow. So who's your Senate representative? You have to vote for a House rep and a Senate in your county?
Let's see, there's Marcy Kaptur, and oh God, who's the other guy? I can't remember his name because it's a Democrat.
Yeah, but so don't you have a is there no Republican that you can vote for? Give them a shout out.
Yeah, there is, but they never make it. Not in this county.
Yeah, but it's still good.
They're
Still good
so,
to vote.
the union is so brainwashed. They follow whatever their union reps say, whatever they say to do, they do it. They won't even walk into a Walmart or pass a picket line or, I mean, anything. My husband's family is pretty much, except for my husband, are all union workers.
Wow, wow. Well, so you're in Ohio, right?
Yeah, Northwest Ohio.
Oh, okay. Wow. Well, that's nice that you called. What was your name?
Joe Cameron.
Okay, Joe. Yeah, I appreciate you calling. So you're listening there with your family, and it's good to get some feedback, because I do this show and I don't really see a whole lot of feedback. And also, the show can be listened to people can tune in over the weekend and they can pull it up on YouTube now and view it at a later time. So it's not just for those people that are listening live, but it's always nice to be able to hear from people that are listening in live. And so did you have any comments about what we were discussing, what I was discussing here earlier?
No, I just want to thank you, first of all, of fast forwarding Obama's voice, because I do not like that man's voice either. He lied to us, he's cheated us, and I think that they just don't like the fact, that the flashlight is being lit in the darkness, and the rats and the cockroaches are just attacking. But they're biting only Trump's ankles. That's about all they're doing. They can't seem to get to his jugular because he's telling he's doing the best he can, and he's trying to tell the truth as best he can. But he is a man, and we should not just focus on following him. We need to focus and follow Yahweh. Exactly.
My view is much like what Joshua had when he met the commander of the armies of God, and he said, well, whose side are you on? Are you on Israel's side? And you would have thought that the commander of the armies of God would say, oh, yeah, I'm on your side. But he didn't. He said, no, he said, I'm the commander of the hosts of heaven. And so whose side should we be on? We should be always on God's side. If Trump, goes the wrong way, doesn't say the right thing, our name's not tied with him. We're for him because God put him in office. So we're for him for that reason alone. And we support him because, it says, the scriptures say that we should pray for those in leadership over us. And so actually what I wanted to mention also was that that last song, Psalm 23, and also that scripture is waiting on God. Really, Trump is going through these struggles and these tough times, and that we need to pray for him. Can you imagine being in his place where he what we found out from that anonymous New York Times article was that people in his own cabinet were plotting against him. In fact, James Baker came out and contradicted Rosenstein's, the deputy attorney general, testimony that he had told Trump, no, I never said this, that I was suggesting an Article 25 thing where we would remove the president for cause of action valid to that Article 25. Well, apparently James Baker said, oh, no, he was very serious and he wasn't joking about it. So now we've got contradictory testimony that is contradicting what Rosenstein. So there's that story about the snake, and Trump was playing this in 2016. He said, "Oh, snake, whatever," that poem, and he says, and then, "Oh, why did you bite me?" And the snake says, "Well, I'm a snake." So when you've got people in his own cabinet like Rosenstein who are trying to take him out, that's what it's what it looks like. Well, then say Trump, hey. You appointed a snake, then don't, you only have yourself to blame if they turn around and bite you. But we certainly do need to be praying for our president. Was there anything else you'd like to say and add into that?
No, just thank you very much for the truth and for being part of Lamb Radio's family. I appreciate it, and I enjoy it. And in fact, I told Mark earlier I got family coming in for a wedding, and I'll be sharing your YouTube.
Yeah, nice.
Channel and everything, because they all are, my family's coming from California, where all the nuts and fruits live.
Oh,
and
yes.
so they are believers, and they've been looking for some real news. And so now I have this YouTube channel to share with them. And I just want to say thank you for taking the call.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And if there's any other listeners out there, now you know it's okay to call in, and we are able to take your calls. This show is live. So you feel free to call in. And thank you very much, Joe, for calling, and and for sharing this channel, because we like it to be more accessible. That's why Mark's put it out on YouTube, so that way if people can actually subscribe on the YouTube channel and then click on the bell there for notifications, and automatically, as soon as the show comes live, they'll get a notification. They'll be able to tune in and watch it live. So that's great. And also, it's a bit more visual this way too, where I can, let people see what we're talking about and not just hear me on the radio. So thank you very much, Joe. Appreciate you calling in. And all the best there in Ohio. So the number to call in, I'll give you the number if you get a pen ready. I'll give you a number because I normally give the number out, but today I was running in a little bit tight schedule this morning, and so I didn't mention it. But so the number to call is 910-803-3211. So if you got a pen, just write that down. And it perhaps is on the website as well. But if you don't have that handy, you can always write this down, and that way you've got it handy for you, or save it in your phone. Just, give it a title there to call in number for Messianic Lamb Radio. And it's 910-803-3211. And that's the beauty of doing a show live, is that we can have some feedback. And it's good to hear that there's people in Ohio, in a Democrat corner of the country, and not over the beautiful red flyover states. And she's got her relatives from California. And I was talking about those in California. They're not as lonely as they may seem to be. Sure, there's a lot of Democrats there, but there is an awful lot of conservatives there. And they probably are quite aware of the new California, and they want to split California up into 2 or 3 states and kind of corner off the Democrat side of it, and then leave the bulk of California as a more independent state from the Democrats, because the way Jerry Brown has moved California so far to the left, there might not be a possibility of ever resurrecting that side of the state. So why not just corner it off and create a couple more states, so you can have a North and a South California, and then you can have California. So just make California a little smaller, San Francisco and Los Angeles, and then we can have a North and South California. So there's a movement on for that. They had a meeting, I believe, last weekend. So, okay, so what I've got up here is where the hurricane hit. And that's what I was about to moving the show along here, was Michael. This is rather amazing. Okay, so this tiny area here, which is less than about 25 miles, was the only place where you had winds that were in a strong enough to be classified as a hurricane. Now, you heard this was the biggest hurricane ever to hit the Gulf. This is absolutely not true. So right here, if I can, I don't know if you can probably see that, but right here, I've got my mouse where it says Tyndall Air Force Base. Tyndall Air Force Base was devastated by some very strong winds. So Tyndall Air Force Base recorded sustained winds at 86 miles an hour, not 155 like they claimed it was when it came ashore. 86 miles an hour. In fact, the only place where it was 86 was this outlined area here. You have buoys in the Gulf, and all the buoys, they had lower wind speeds, much lower wind speeds than this. In fact, the buoy with the highest wind speed, I'm talking the highest wind speed, where they said it was 155 miles an hour, and over water, the wind is actually the strongest. And the wind in these buoys was recorded, the highest one was 61 knots, which comes out to roughly 74 miles per hour. So the maximum sustained wind, not gusts, because to classify a hurricane, you go by sustained wind. So I'm talking sustained wind levels here. The maximum was 61 knots, which is 74 miles an hour, which is not even classified as a Category 1. It has to be 75 miles an hour, okay? So it was not even a Cat 1. It was just a tropical storm on the Gulf. And then when it hit, there's a tiny area here, because we're going to, let me see if I move over through some of these slides, I can show you some more things here. So on this picture here, we got, look how big this area is here. So we just had, I've got this down here, I've got 12 miles wide. But it's actually say around 23 miles wide, where it says Apalachicola. So Apalachicola is not really what I'm talking about, because I'm talking more about Panama City and a little bit to the east of Panama City. And there's only just like a 20-mile area stretch there, and it only went inland, you know, maybe 2 or 3 miles, or say about 10 miles at the most, where it had this really strong winds, of sustained winds that were recorded at the Air Force Base of 86 miles an hour. And for the rest, you had roughly 45 miles an hour. And say in Apalachicola, which is a little bit to the right of Panama City, right here, it was showing wind speeds, and they said they recorded wind speeds of 56 miles an hour. My friend of mine, he said that they had maybe recorded a wind speed of, say, 65 miles an hour. We're talking gusts. I'm saying sustained winds was 45 miles an hour. See here, this whole orange area, 45 miles an hour. And outside of that, we had less than 30 miles an hour, okay? Is that a Category 4? Absolutely not. This photo here is just a few minutes after it landed. So then if I go across here is the recordings of some of the buoys here. So this here is the official report from NOAA.gov, okay? And as you can see, the time here, we're talking about Greenwich Mean Time was at 0450, and where it went from 33 miles an hour to 52 miles an hour. And wind gusts were, say, like over here, they don't really have it next to, there's no number there, but then say at 47 miles an hour, it reached a peak of 62. What I'm saying is, I don't know why, but this is the official government weathered wind speeds was showing here 52 miles an hour. And it says right there at the time, Greenwich Mean Time. And then here, you can see at the top here, is I've got the National Data Buoy Center. Okay, so the buoys in the Gulf. And here it's got the date, the 10th. And this is at GMT time. Okay, was 1760. So that's about 5 p.m. or so. And so you can see here that the strongest wind was reported on the official government website for the entire day was 61 knots. 61 knots is 74 miles an hour. That is just 1 mile an hour. That's the strongest, I'm saying, sustained winds. And so for the rest, it was, you know, lower, like in the 40s or 50s for sustained winds. And then you can see wind gusts right here is 67 knots, which is approximately, say, 80, 85. Okay. So this is from the buoys in the Gulf, which the wind should be traveling at a faster pace over the Gulf. And then if we go over here, so this is the area which I'm showing you, just a little bit to the north of Panama City, was the only place that they had wind gusts. Now look at, see Overstreet here? Overstreet is just, if you look down here, this is 5 miles on the scale, on the key of the graph. On this picture that I've got here is 5 miles an hour. 5 miles is only about like 2 inches here. So you're say 4 miles from the coast, from Mexico Beach. You go in 4 miles, and at Overstreet is the name of the town. At Overstreet, they recorded a max sustained wind of 45. They had higher gusts, maybe 60 or 70 gusts, but I'm saying just in from the coast, they recorded a maximum of 45 miles per hour of sustained wind gusts. I mean, sustained winds. And then just on the coast here, especially near the airport. Now, where the most of the damage was, yes, there was a lot of damage, and it was mostly where the damage is done is they had something like 10 to 12 feet of, some places had 5 feet, some places had 10 feet, some it looked like they might have had as much as 12 feet of storm surge. So yes, storm surge is really what is going on. So here is another, storm surge is where most of the damage is done with flooding and stuff. But as far as strong winds goes, I mean, you only need to knock down trees, you only need 60 miles an hour or less. And if you have, a good bit of rain and then a bit of wind, you can see trees knocked down. So over here in the Gulf course, you can see the hurricane approaching. It wasn't a hurricane. It was just a tropical storm. This is a tropical storm approaching. And they said at this point, it was a Category 2, I believe. And as it got closer, they said it was a 3, and then they said it was a 4 as it came in close. And they said it hit as a Category 4, 155 mile an hour sustained winds. That's not the case. So in this map here, you see some extremely unusual formations. These are like the colors here. I don't have the key on this graph, but the key is normally like, say, the darker the color, the stronger the wind. So as you know, if you got the reds in here, and there's a little bit of red there, that means some very high winds. And the blue is the low winds. So see all these little spots here with blue winds? Okay, those spots are like, they are either like nuclear power stations, or they are geoengineering centers where they put out these powerful microwave center. If you heard of HAARP in Alaska, they kind of shut HAARP down because they made HAARP into a very mobile unit type thing, and they could actually put it on airplanes. They can sit it at nuclear power stations and stuff like that. So what you got going on here, what I believe was you had a tropical storm, and at Eglin Air Force Base, you can see streaks coming out of that, which were to excite the temperatures around the coastal area here. And if you get temperature differentiations, that's where wind is created from. And so what it looks like was they were able to take this, because they had to. So what happens is the government, through NOAA and the Weather Channel, they tell the news, the mainstream media, what to report about this hurricane. And what they were told to report was this was a Category 4. And then what they would do then is they would tweak it as it approached the coast and try to get the winds up to like a Category 4. They failed totally in that they only got some gusts to get up to, looks like from their own data, is 129 miles an hour wind gusts, with sustained levels at 86 miles an hour for just a time. Look how big that storm is. It's supposed to be spreading about 90 miles from one side to the other. The 90 miles, right? But the center where this high wind area was of 86 miles an hour with sustained winds, it was only about 20 miles. So just a tiny, tiny, tiny spot on that coast was actually hit by this very strong winds. So anyway, so that's, look, here's another picture of how big that storm was. It was a big area, but you don't see a lot of red in there, or purple. Red and purple would indicate real heavy rain. It was not a whole lot of heavy rain because it was not a very powerful storm. It just wasn't. It was a large area of, looks like maybe 100 miles an hour. If you remember, Sandy had stretched maybe 200 or 300 miles wide. This one was only stretching, perhaps according to their data, is 186 miles total, where you could feel, say, some winds from it.
but they said that the actual storm, tropical storm, or they're actually claiming hurricane could be felt 90 miles from one end to the other, 45 miles radius from the center of the eye, which absolutely wasn't true. It wasn't even a category 1. And now just by the shoreline I showed you there, it was. So why this is, I don't know. I'm asking the questions, and I don't know why we have, why they're playing games with us and not telling us the truth. That's why News for Life is here, is to show you what's really going on. I don't know what's really going on, but I can show you what really did happen. And there was not one official, like at the airport, which was hit the worst there. It showed sustained winds of just 86 miles an hour at the peak. And that was their highest reading for sustained winds. So this is Ben Carson, and he goes, "We, the American people, are not each other's enemies. The enemies are those people behind the curtain, jerking everybody's chains and trying to divide us up by age and by race and by income and by class and by education and all this." He's absolutely right. And I've been saying this for a long time, is that there isn't division in this country. There is, by the way. So you're going to see a lot more appearance of division coming in these midterms, because if they lose like I think they will lose, and it looks like they're going to lose big, if they lose as big as like I think they will, this is you're going to see a meltdown. If you thought there was a meltdown when Trump won in 2016, don't you remember all those paid demonstrators that were bussed into all these places? They bust them in. If you've got to bus in protesters, that means they're paid. All right, protesters are not going to, get a bus to go to a town. Now, if you're paid to go to protest in Charlottesville and in Charlotte, North Carolina, and in different places around the country, yeah, you're paid. You're paid by perhaps Soros or somebody like that, but you're definitely not a real protester. And so what he's saying is those behind the curtain are jerking everybody's chains. That is absolutely true. Under Obama, and that's why I played it fast forward, because I really can't stand to hear that guy, is that he had tried to stir up racism, and he tried to stir up a civil war, and he failed every time. I don't have time to go into this because I just got a few minutes left, but this is where the divide is. Say, for instance, we have some 330 million people live in this country. And if you've got a few million, and I would say, like, say of the Democrats, they claim to have 44% of those that vote are Democrats. 44% they supposedly claim are registered Democrats that vote. Well, of that 44%, you might have 10% of those, which would be about 4.4 million, that are the ones that are, say, stirring up their base to go crazy and to go insane. Oh, man. So I've got some really good audio, which I can't play now, but maybe in my next show, I'll play you some things that Dianne Feinstein had said and Nancy Pelosi has said. So these are coming from the leaders of the Democrats, and you'd be shocked what games they play. And they actually had the audacity to say this publicly. This is crazy. And Nancy Pelosi is saying this. I'm going to play this next week. Coming up to the midterms, you need to know what these people are thinking. We actually know. And Trump has been able to really push their buttons. And instead of succumbing to all the pressure they put on him, it backfires and actually is causing people, a lot of black people in particular, they say, I didn't like Trump for this reason or that reason. He said, but when I see the way the Democrats were attacking him, they would say, I found myself defending him. And that's what's happened, is that you've got a huge movement of people that see the injustice. You might not care for a lot of things about Trump that you might not care for. But then when you see the way the mainstream media with the 92% negative stories on Trump, and you see the way the Democrats have just stirred people up. And after they had sworn a governor in, there were protesters, not many. They had maybe say 200 or 300 of them. They had just a noisy. I'm talking 200 or 300 out of 330 million people. You know, we're not talking a lot of people. And so, but even if there was a few million that marched to Washington, a few million out of the 330 million, it's these noisy 3 or 4 million that are the agitators and that make it look like we're divided. By the way, isn't it strange? The people that say that we are divided is the Democrats. You know why they say that? Because they want to unite us under their agenda. And if we will not unite under their agenda, they will destroy us and they will divide us. That's their program. That's the only thing they know to do. But when Obama was in office, did they ever say we were divided? No, not unless they were trying to get us to agree with them. So they want us to agree with them. And when we don't, they say we're divided. Well, I think we've always had more than at least two parties in American politics since the country was founded. So just why exactly would they ever say that? I don't know. So this is a serious problem in America, is that there's mainstream media is pretending there's this huge division. There isn't a huge division, but we need to pray that they're unsuccessful in making it even look like there's this huge division. And there's a lot that can be said on that, but we're running out of time, so I'll cover that another time, and we'll go over some of those things. Yes, I wanted to. I'll tell you what. The next show, this man Ronald Reagan, he was quite a man, and I want to show the funny side of him on my next show. So be sure to tune in, and you'll get some good laughs because this guy had a wild sense of humor, and this guy, he said, my boss is going to kill me because he didn't waste up his car properly. They were going to talk about here Nancy Pelosi, and she's going to just tell you their agenda and how it works. Really, it's really demonic. And we'll have a listen to a minute or so from Dianne Feinstein so we can see what she used to believe and what she believes today. The Democrat Party is not what it used to be. So if you're a Democrat and you're listening to this, I really feel for you because there were some great Democrats in our past. However, as a whole, the Democrat Party had some real issues, but they've really strayed from what they once were. I really like a lot of things that John F. Kennedy said. He said some really good things. So then we can see, oh yeah, so we'll discuss that. I had some really cute things that some young kids, as they learn to talk, the funny things that they say. If we get a chance, I'll play that on the next show as well. And we'd like to thank you for tuning in to News for Life. And be sure to share and be sure to subscribe to the new YouTube channel. We're going to make it easy for you to be able to get notifications of when we're going live on a program. And if you subscribe and you click on that notification right next to subscribe, you'll see a bell-shaped thing. And if you click on that, it will allow you to receive notifications. And we also have the Thursday night show, which is at 9 p.m. on Thursdays now. So News for Life actually starts on Thursday at 9 p.m. So be sure to tell your friends about that and tune in for next Thursday's show, where we've got a lot of other news items, which I never got to. There's some really important things going on. And by the way, Trump has been doing some great campaigning, and I wanted to mention that, which I'll do right before we close out here, is that, it's 8 p.m. Central. Thursday show is 8 p.m. Central, okay? So thank you, Mark, for letting me remind me about the time zone. A lot of people are familiar with the Lamb Radio's time zone is in Central Time. So that's going to be 8 p.m. Next Thursday. Be sure to tune in. But just talking briefly, this is why, so do the polls make any sense? They make it sound like the Democrats are going to steal control of the House of Representatives, and you know, like if you believe Hillary, that they got a chance to even take the Senate. Well, but take a look what's really going on. Trump is doing these campaign rallies around the country, and he's getting 10, 20, 30,000 people show up, and he'll have thousands of people outside. So they put big screens up so people that can't get in, and they're waiting as long as a day or two to even get into the premises. And the lineup is over a mile long. And by the way, there are no protesters that dare to show up at these rallies. Can you imagine that? If we're such a divided nation, how is it possible that these Democrats that are supposedly all these protests that are furious and mad about the direction of the country, why is it they don't even dare show up at one of Trump's rallies? Is they know that they'll be shouted down and that Americans won't tolerate it. And there's lots of Hispanics. As I mentioned, that huge win in Texas a few weeks ago, that special election, that was 66%, I believe it was, Hispanic. And they put in a Republican. They are going for conservative politics, and they're getting tired of what the Democrats have been giving them. And so Hispanics are turning and supporting Trump. Blacks are turning in huge numbers like never before. And you do not see one, huge rally ever for the Democrats. Of course, granted, Trump is the president. When he shows up, people like to show up. But if you remember back to the midterms when Obama was in office, he never was able to pull in crowds. In fact, he had a rally in California, like a stronghold, and he wasn't even able to get the stadium or whatever he was at even half full. It was filled with empty seats. Let me say, it was unfilled. It was an unfilled venue. And so that's what's really happening around the country, is that people are waiting in line for a day or two just to be at one of Trump's rallies. They're showing up, they're overfilling these venues to capacity, and it's really exciting, and it's generating a lot of, I don't ever see any midterms that have stirred up so much excitement as these midterms. And do not take that for granted, and do not get lackadaisical and comfortable. Find people who do not vote, and especially if they're believing like you, then take them to the polls and help them vote. And if you like, maybe next Thursday we can talk about voting and what are maybe some of the drawbacks for voting, because I know some people are not voting. So we should maybe take a listen to that. And if you'd like to call into the show, don't forget the phone number to call in is 910-803-3211. Have a wonderful Shabbat Shalom and a wonderful weekend. And thank you once again for tuning in today. And we'll see you next week.